Hello and welcome everyone to a small strategy video on my Force versus Finesse Memoir 44 double breakthrough map scenario. So as the title goes, I will tell you some strategy tips if you ever want to try out this scenario for yourselves. I'll make it available within the next couple of weeks on Board Game Geek. I'm planning on trying it out with a friend still one more time and see how that goes. I'm not expecting there will be any major changes. Should that particular playtest um, be cause for four major changes, obviously it will be a bit longer before I'm actually going to post it, but I will post it. And if you want to play it yourself, well, then here are a couple of things you will need to consider based on my design and the playtests that I've done so far. So the first thing I want to point out to you is, especially the Germans, but also the Soviets, this is the right-hand board. And if you get cards for that particular section, of course, for the Germans, it's a mirror image. But such cards, I mean, over here in the beginning, there's a bit of action. You want to clear the Russian units here. But other than that, that part of the board doesn't see too much action. However, you do want to put some units there, some reinforcements. You get some ground reinforcements so as to not make those cards completely useless. You can move such a unit as this one, you can move it up to, and then later on move it to the center of the board where it will be more useful generally. But you really do not want to waste 1/3 of your cards or so. As I said, the same is more or less true for the Russians. Who actually at this moment do not have any units there, but many of them did start there, and later on they moved on to the middle and moved up there. But you do want to use that particular section of the board as well. Something else that I've already pointed out in one of my playthrough videos, but there is a special rule, which is that the Germans can build 2 pontoon bridges, 1 per board maximum, and the Russians can build 1 in total. And as a Germans, you really do not want to build one over here or over here, because this terrain is very easily defensible for the Russians. In many of my playtests, I've had Russian units here as well. In this case, it really wasn't necessary because they were all converging on this point. But this is, it's very easily defensible terrain, and you'll find yourself in a killing zone, so you really don't want to do that. This would be a very good point for a German built, maybe at this point of the game, but this is actually over. Mind you, this is not the setup. This is the end of my latest playtest, the 5th one, and this was more or less, well, actually almost completely what the board looked like at the end of that particular playtest. This would be a great point for the Germans relatively early on, when the Russians really aren't as strong yet as they are now, to build a bridge and to make a push for it here, and force the Russians to defend that part by moving units from here or moving units from here. Unfortunately, in none of my playtests, I've actually had the Germans have the opportunity to build one at a time when it was convenient for them. But should they have one, an attack card, in this case for them the right-hand section, there is a special rule to it, though, that I do want any side that builds a pontoon bridge to have a unit adjacent at the time of building it. I don't know, it just feels weird to me to be able to construct one without actually having a unit there. And it also means that you still have a chance to get rid of that particular unit, so that it's not adjacent to the river anymore, so you can actually drive it off, and it can actually build. So that is definitely something I'm going to keep as well. Here you can see a mobile artillery unit, and that is a potent unit, as everybody knows, because you can move and still attack, so you can really move forward. At the beginning of the game, there is an option for the Russians to try and take it out. There is something the Germans can do to counter that as well, but if you get the chance as the Russians, well, this is certainly a top priority target, especially as long as it's still in the baseline, which is definitely still possible after turn 1. And then if you can it starts somewhere over here. Don't know the exact hex, but somewhere over here. And the Russians have, at setup, they have a KV-1 here and a T-34 there, or the other way around. And if they can actually move up a couple of hexes and attack it on the baseline, in which case flags would be hits too, then it's certainly worth trying. Something else I want to point out is the supply trucks. You really want to take out entire German units and not just weaken them as a Soviet player, because with all the supply trucks, and I mean they start with 2 or 3 and a couple of half tracks as well, which can also resupply, but they usually get a couple more with ground reinforcement die results, and then you will see as the Russian player and as a German player that those weakened units will simply come back to full strength, or at least, if not full strength, then at least they'll be stronger again than they used to be. So for the Russians, it really makes sense to try and destroy complete units. Having said that, and it looks as only an advantage for the Germans that the supply truck units consist of 3 full units, even on the ground reinforcement roll, which is different from the actual table from the ground reinforcements from the D-Day scenario. Of course, it does mean that to get a medal, you need to destroy 3 trucks or 3 half tracks in order to get a medal. It does mean that you can focus on a single unit, and so that is certainly a great thing to do if you can manage to destroy a single half track, because it will both get you a single half track unit, or a single, well, not half track unit because those consist of 2, but single truck unit, because that particular unit will give you a medal right away, and it won't be able to resupply German units. So you basically kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Something else, the Russians have 4 command cards, so normally they would only get to roll 4 dice for the ground reinforcements, but as long as they are in possession of the majority of town hexes, which means 7 or more, they get to roll an additional 3 dice for ground reinforcement purposes. So you really want to hang on as long as possible. Actually, it usually means that if you're not very close to winning, you will lose as a Russian player, because you will get very few ground reinforcements from then on, if you are ever reduced to just rolling 4. So if you can contest a couple of towns as long as possible, retake them if you can, that is really something you need to do as much as possible, and you really want to hang on to 7 or more of them. Something else which you may have seen in my latest video, which was the completion of my 5th playtest playthrough. It was actually an accident. I didn't mean to do that, but it's actually a good idea to leave a single medal open to the Germans and just move in. So that means not actually moving in and taking it, but just going around it at first and destroying Russian units. And then once you're very close to winning, this is a certain medal that you're going to have, so you can move in a unit at a later time as well. This is a nice location for especially a German built pontoon bridge, because it will open up a direct route to the town of Brody, and one of the victory conditions is that the Germans hold, that's a sudden death condition, hold Brody, Dubno, and Lutsk all at the same time. So if you can actually open up this path pretty early on, because this way you have to make a detour, you're vulnerable to any Russian units that are in the woods and will probably attack you at an advantage. So if you can manage to build a bridge here as the Germans, that's certainly an option as well. That's worth considering. Of course, you need the right cards, but yeah. If you do have that particular card, in this case, it would be one for the center, I suppose. Yes, this hex is in the center. So an attack center card, that is certainly a place where you might want to consider building one. This is a place where the Russians actually built one on the last playtest as well. latest playtest. It's a good position for them because it means that they don't all have to be funneled through here. You can open a path for the strong tank units that the Russians start with at the beginning of the game, and you can move them here as well, and also open a more direct road to Brody. In the Russians' case, it's mostly to defend it, obviously, and not so much as to take it. Now, if you actually happen to have very strong forces as the Russians, and the Germans should also have built one here, then actually that could work to your advantage as well. But yeah, probably, yeah, then all things will have to come together, but who knows. Air Force, German Air Force, they have air superiority, which means they get to roll 2 dice on any air power card they use, or a Recon 1 card, which also gives them that option, or it gives them the option, a Recon 1 card, that is, to play it as an artillery bombard. So their artillery units get to move 3 hexes, or they get to fire twice. But yeah, this is something you really want to avoid as the Russians, to have 4 units lined up, especially in this particular situation, because the units can't retreat here. This one can, but this one cannot. This one cannot. Well, this one actually could, and could retreat onto the bridge, but this one wouldn't be able to, and the same goes for that one. This one isn't able to retreat, so a flag would be a hit as well, and a star. So, air power is really a good way to deal with such a defensive Russian position. And as I mentioned in a couple of other videos in which I discussed some options at setup, both for the Germans and for the Russians at the start of the game, if you have the opportunity as the Germans, I wouldn't do it on the very first turn, but certainly on the second or third, if all the Russian tank units that more or less start over here are still bunched up, then you really want to target them with air power and reduce them. They won't be able to retreat either, because they would have to retreat onto friendly units, which is of course impossible. Stars are hits, and yeah, as you can see here, these units actually never made it to the front. They mostly stayed here or even moved backwards, because this one has been reduced to 2 figures and this one to a single one, so that is really not a unit you want to have too close to the front. The same thing goes for this particular unit over here, which was also reduced, and it retreated because of that, because that would be an easy medal for the Germans. It retreated out of range of the German artillery. Of course, it cannot retreat out of range of German air power, so a unit such as that one is still always a target, but that is something that is true the other way around as well. But keep in mind that the Russians, because of the air superiority rules, only roll a single die when they play the air power card per attack, and the Germans roll 4. Well, finally, I think I haven't mentioned this yet. This is an important section of the board as well, because this is where the 2 boards join. So a hex such as this one is great as well, because you can order it with a card from the left hand deck, or you can order it with a hand from the right hand deck. So that gives you really many more options, and it's a good way to amass forces as well with ground reinforcements. But again, also here, air power is a severe threat, because if you bunch them all up here and the Germans have an air power card or a Recon 1 card, they'd be foolish not to use it. So this concludes my little strategy video of Force versus Finesse, my Memoir 44 double breakthrough map scenario. I hope you've enjoyed it, and once it's available, should you get to play it, by all means let me know how the scenario went for you. Thank you for watching.